Okay, so Mike, we are all set to start with the webinar. Miss Kritika, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Yeah. Kritika, you can just start with the webinar, and we are live on YouTube.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to everybody joined with us today. I am Kritika Sood, Research Assistant at National Forensic Sciences University, and I'm extremely delighted to be the host for this session. National Forensic Sciences University is known to be the pioneer in reforming the field of forensic science and imparting the necessary skill and expertise to forensic scientists all over the world. National Forensic Sciences University is equipped with state-of-the-art technology and resources to provide students and forensic professionals both opportunity and knowledge to grow and learn more. NFSU's Multimedia Department, headed by Dr. Surbhi Mathur, Senior Assistant Professor here at NFSU, is back with yet another informative webinar session on the topic, Introducing Human Recognizers into Law Enforcement and Border Security in India. The eminent speakers for the session include Mr. Mike Nerville, who served as the head of Central Forensic Image Team in New Scotland Yard and currently is the CEO at Super Recognizers International. We also have Ms. Kelly Hearsey, Operational Super Recognizer at Super Recognizers International Limited. Super Recognizers International are the world leaders in human super recognition and is now an extended family of NFSU working round the clock to bring about a revolution in the future of criminal investigations. Mike, sir, Kelly, ma'am, we are very glad to have you with us today. And with your kind permission, I request you to begin the interesting session we have all been waiting for.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Good morning in UK and good afternoon in India. So you'll have to forgive me because I'm letting people into the meeting as well. So this the talk I'm going to give today is on human super recognizers, and so bear with me while I go through my slides. So. What is a human super recognizer? Well, this is a human being with a fantastic ability to remember faces. And this research started in Harvard University in the States, where Professor Richard Russell, he was looking into people who are called prosopagnosics, or people who are face blind, often through either a hereditary condition or via a stroke. And he, if we look at the left-hand side of this chart, where it shows the bell curve of human abilities, he said that most people, of course, are average at anything, whether it's playing chess or playing football or cricket or being a super or recognizing faces. And so if we look on the far left, we can see somebody who's face blind, somebody who's that's what they would see of themselves. But on the right-hand side, he said, if there are people who are extremely bad or prosopagnosics, then there must be those who are super recognizers, and this is what we can see here. And this is what we're trying to find. So it's about Professor Davis at Greenwich University in London estimates it's possibly 1% of the population have got some form of disability. And so in India, of course, that means there are millions of super recognizers who could help. So, and of course, it's never been. This is the time that we need.
Mike, just a second. Mike, just a second.
Yes.
Sorry. Mr. Sarvesh, you are requested to keep your mic on the mute mode. Kindly mute all of you. Yes.
Your content.
You can continue, Mike.
Okay, thank you. And so we also live in a world now where people wear masks all the time. In England 2 years ago, if somebody had gone into a bank with a mask on, the police would have been called. Now the police have been called if they're not wearing a mask. But this doesn't defeat super recognizers who can see beyond it. So if we look on the right-hand side, this is the case of Stephen Prince, who was involved in the 2011 riots in London. And you can see that he's wearing a hat, and he's wearing a bandana, a scarf around his face, but he was still identified by a super recognizer who was a police constable in London. just by simply his eyes. And of course, this is in the world today with terrorism. This is Salman Abedi, who was the suicide bomber at the Manchester Arena attacks. It's never been more important that the police and law enforcement can identify people. And there's lots of academic support for this concept of super recognition. This quote is from Dr. David Robertson, who was at York and who's now at Strathclyde University in Scotland. And you can see that when he assessed the results of the Scotland Yard super recognisers, that he says here that it supports the wider use of them in police forces and in things like border control, where it's matching faces is vital to a nation's security. And India, like the UK, faces all sorts of problems of crime and terrorism. And there's been some major successes. So in Britain, we had the case of the two Russian assassins who came over to Salisbury to assassinate the Skripals, and what happened there, that the two super recognisers were given all the CCTV footage of Salisbury to watch, and then they watched all the footage of anyone entering from ports and airports where you could get to hear from Russia, and they matched up the people who arrived there. And Kelly will speak, is on here, and she can answer your questions. She's an operational super recognizer. Sometimes with super recognizers, it's just as important that they can say that's not the same person. And with the case of Khashoggi, who was the dissident journalist who was tricked into the Saudi embassy in Istanbul, when he was killed, they dressed a look-alike in his clothing so they could claim he wasn't dead. And Kelly was the one who could verify that that isn't the same person. And there is international interest. It's wonderful to be partnered with the Indian National Forensic Science University, but there's lots of work in Germany. Australia's got its own super recognizer unit, and we're working in the States, Argentina and Iraq. So this is spreading across the world. And where it all came from is, as a junior detective, I realized that whilst fingerprints and DNA were managed in a very professional and systematic way, the facts are that images weren't. So if in England, or I imagine in India, that if your fingerprint marks are found or your DNA is found, they'll be checked across a national database. If you go through Interpol, it could be international, and then it'll be properly managed by senior police officers. With images, they're often just found and circulated locally. There's no supervision processes, and this is where we need to improve, and this is where super recognizers can make a vast difference in increasing the identification and linking of prolific offenders to several offences. So what happened in the UK is that there was a massive investment in CCTV. The case you can see on the left was a young boy, Jamie Bulger, who was kidnapped and murdered. The interesting fact, though, was that he was about 4 years old. Without the CCTV, the police would have imagined it was an adult paedophile who captured him. The CCTV showed it was two boys who took him and then killed him. This fascinated the public, it encouraged politicians, and vast amounts of money was spent on CCTV. But it was really put up with the idea that it would prevent crime. There was no thought given to how do we recover the evidence, how do we use it smarter. And this is all part of the work involved with super recognizers. And so the police in London recover very little. Only about 2% of crimes produce a CCTV image. And of course, super recognizers need images to make identifications. And a problem for the police is, of course, it's very difficult now. Previously, when there was VHS tapes, they were easy to recover. Digital footage is harder. But the world is awash with images. Not only is the CCTV, there are drones flying around. There are doorbells that record people as they're entering a house. Police officers wear body-worn video, and Facebook and the like produces vast amounts of images. If you look at the bottom, the girl in white, the diamond-shaped image, she attacked a girl, stole her phone, and took a selfie. But the selfie uploaded onto the victim's Facebook site, so the victim was able to supply us with that image, and a super recognizer was able to identify, as you can see. And this is a big problem. The police often manage images in a very slapdash and unprofessional manner. So, for example, this case, this is 9 images of robberies. But it's all the same man, and he's committing offences all over London. Now, previously, before I introduced these systems, they wouldn't have been dealt with in a systematic way, and they wouldn't have been linked together. And if you link crimes together, there are several benefits. Firstly, the person's far more likely to admit it because they're faced with all those images of themselves. Secondly, you've got lots of opportunities to search their house and find the clothing or items that they're carrying. And also then, by pleading guilty, the police don't have to give evidence. The victim who's been traumatized doesn't have to give evidence. And so it saves the taxpayer a lot of money. And this is what we could do in India, because if there is 100 crimes, you're well aware there's not 100 offenders. There's probably 10 offenders committing at least 10 each. And you could ask, what about facial recognition machines? Surely we don't need humans doing this anymore because we have facial recognition. Well, facial recognition only works in the very tight circumstances. So the front on face, it's the airports it works because the background and the lighting is correct. And to give an example, that in the riots in London, there was 4,000 images recovered of suspects. And if we look at the ones bottom right, we can see that none of these would have been suitable for facial recognition. They're either the face is at an angle or the face is covered. This was the only one out of 4,000 that the machine identified. You can see it's like a passport photograph, whereas this officer here, who's next to Boris Johnson when he was the Mayor of London, Gary Collins, he identified 180, including the one I showed you at the start. So humans are far better at facial recognition, particularly with blurred images or those at an angle. And most CCTV isn't captured like a digital photograph. And no machine could identify that sort of image, but a human can, because humans take into account not just the face, but where the person is, their walk or gait, all sorts of other factors that super recognizers take into account. We had an identification just this week while training the police. We told the students that one of the targets was a former soldier, and one of the things they picked up on was his walk, his military bearing as he walked. The photograph was 30 years old. 30 years ago the photograph was taken, but they still picked him out. But one of the factors was that knowledge of his military background. And there's been lots of criticisms of facial recognition because it's difficult to it's particularly bad with black and Asian faces, and so there's a question of bias, so that's not good. In the States, California, Massachusetts, facial recognition automatic stuff has been banned. In the UK, it's not allowed to be used live either. There's a case in Wales. But it's not a competition. You can see this quote here from the US National Institute of Standards and Technology. And what it shows is that combining the facial recognition software with a human super recognizer makes all the difference. And so there we are. So if you do use automated facial recognition, you need to have a human super recognizer to be the person who verifies it. In the UK, that's part of the law, but there's also an ethical dimension to this, that we don't really want computers telling the police to arrest people. And this is a quote from Professor Innes. Professor Innes studied the South Wales use of facial recognition, and the police referred to this to the software as AFR, automated facial recognition. And you can see from this quote here that Professor Innes makes the point that the A should stand for assisted facial recognition, because it always needs a human operator. And so that human operator should be a super recognizer. And there's a problem, no doubt, in India too, in the UK, with politicians and senior police officers obsessed with technology, thinking that buying the latest equipment will make a difference, when really we need to have people and processes to make sure that they use it in the correct way. And just by way of example, the FBI were asked in the States by Congress how many facial recognition identifications they had. You can see here 150,000 over 2 years. They were asked the results and they had no idea. So we need to manage images in the same way as fingerprints and DNA. So how do we find super recognizers? Well, there's two ways. You see Idris up here, the black guy. He is a fantastic super recognizer who works for the police. In addition to being a jailer, which is somebody who puts people in the cells in the police station, he will make 300 identifications a year. He actually received a medal from the Queen. At the bottom, though, you can see Professor Davis from Greenwich, who's the academic lead on super recognizers. And what we can do, whilst I knew Idris was a super recognizer because of my police statistics, we also developed some tests to find them. We know as well that it's this part of the brain here is where it operates. We've done MRI scans, so we know where it is, and it's an hereditary trait. You can't be trained to be a super recognizer. You're either born with it or you're not. What we can do is train you to use that skill to the best of your ability and in a legal and ethical manner, in accordance with the laws of India or whichever country we're in. And these are how we produce the scores. Kelly, who you hear from, is one of the highest scoring ever in the world. Anything above 0, we mark them as we give some leeway, minus 0.5 is classified as a super recognizer. And as you can see, there are various tests, short-term and long-term memory, matching images and spotting people in a crowd. So how do we use super recognizers and how could they make a difference in India? Well, what we did in London is we created a database of all the images, which could then be shared with officers, so particularly the super recognizers, so they could see who was committing crime. And this database, which created this magazine, enabled the super recognizers to use images smarter. And this was particularly pushed forward by the London riots, where the senior police officers and the commissioner realized that there had to be more done with images. So we looked at professionalizing how we showed images rather than just sent out emails. You can see Idris here. He would be visited. He would be shown images of the criminal types he knew about. So in his case, at Westminster, in the centre of London, he knew about Westminster thieves and burglars. An officer, as you see in the picture here, would visit him and show him these images, take time to then record all the evidence so it could be presented and was admissible at court. And what we found, we developed a tactic called face snapping. So with fingerprints and DNA, we've long been able to say we know who if we know or don't know the person, what we can say is that they're linked to several other crimes. So the fingerprints found at one burglary can be linked to fingerprints found at several others. The DNA found in one rape victim can be matched to the DNA in several other victims of rape. And so we can, when we arrest a suspect, they're not charged with one offence, they're charged with a number of them. With images, it's often been left that they just dealt with us one crime at a time. Here, though, you can see that this is the case of Paolo Ronchi, who was a sort of Italian, but he was a burglar in London. We knew he was white, we knew he's male, we knew he wore a hat often, and he was a burglar. And these details were entered into the database, where every image was loaded up with a description, and it threw up hundreds of images of white men committing burglary in a hat. And we can already see Ronchi here. Ronchi was actually found 14 times, and so he was arrested and charged with all those offences. So he was the first person to be found guilty as a result of a super recognizer face snapping exercise. And this man here, Caballero, again, he was found that he was the most found. He was 43 times he was found for high value thefts in London. And it just shows the value of super recognizers, because before the database and before super recognizers, he wouldn't have been linked in this manner. And then we turned the tactic of Caballero on its head. and we developed something called the Domino Tactic, where basically you get one criminal and you get all their associates. So we knew that Caballero in the centre here was a very active criminal. We looked on the police database to see who he committed crimes with. And you can see the 4 individuals there. We then gave those images to the super econisers, who rechecked the database and solved 100 crimes because they were captured doing more. So
Kritika, is Mike voice available? Like, is he audible?
No, ma'am.
I'll just call Mike.
Ma'am, actually,
Yeah. Just give me some time. I'll just talk to him.
yes, ma'am.
Give me some time.
I request everyone to please put your mic and camera on off mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. There is some internet connectivity issues from Mr. Mike's side. So he will be, he's available now. Mike, can you hear me now?
yes, I'm back. Sorry.
No, not
yes,
a problem.
I'm
Yeah,
back.
not a problem. Continue.
I am back. Apologies. Right, I'll start sharing my screen again. Hold on.
I request everyone to keep their mics on the off mode, please.
Oh, sorry, Serbi. I'm back where I was. I think.
You was on this Domino Tactic, yes.
Okay, so this, what we did here is that these 5 individuals committed a very vicious assault. In the past, the police would have just shown these images to every officer, resulting in some misidentifications, which would have caused problems at the court case. Here, though, we knew that there was 4 super econisers. I had a list of every super econiser in the had a list of every super econiser in every part of London. I targeted Waltham Forest, where this happened, where there was 4 super econisers. The first super econiser identified the girl. As a result, then we identified everybody else. And so super econisers can be used when you're dealing with serious crime. This case, the image on the right was sent to me of a person who committed rape in a south of London. I was able to email every super recognizer. I had a list of every super recognizer and an email address. I emailed them to say, everybody must look at this now. Within 15 minutes, I had a name. That man was arrested. He denied the crime, but when his DNA was checked, it proved to be him. So it's a lesson in that identification evidence isn't standalone. You can use it with other forensics as well to prove the case. Out in Germany, there was several sex attacks, which I went to assist with again, and we found German super recognizers who did them. And this is a terrible event. This was the Hillsborough disaster, which was in England in 1989. It's still going on. It's that long ago, but 96 people were crushed, and super recognizers. They hadn't found 16 of them in the crowd footage. There was a debate about whether the police had let people in through a certain gate, where people were before the crush happened. And super recognizers found them. So it's not just about suspects. Super recognizers can also help to find victims of crime as well, which was particularly the case with this crime. Alice Gross, so you can see top right, was murdered. There was some footage of her walking across that bridge. She was followed by the man you can see on a bicycle. 10 super recognizers were used to review all the CCTV footage, and within a matter of days, they'd found footage of the man entering a towpath, the side of the canal, and leaving, and then in a shop. So he was identified, and he was found to be a murderer who travelled here from Eastern Europe. But as a result of what the super recognizers found, they searched the canal again, and they actually found Alice's body, which is tragic, but the case was proved by them. And it is critical, as I said at the start with the Khashoggi incident, that it's good that super recognizers can verify that someone is not there. In London, we had a terrible tragedy, the Grenfell Tower, which you can see. It was a residential flat set on fire. The people inside were badly advised by the fire brigade to stay where they are, and as a consequence, many people were killed but what happened was that certain individuals decided to try and make money out of this, try and claim that they lived there. And a super recognizer was used. He watched 3 months of footage, which was from the entrance to the building, and he could verify that the 17 of the people who were claiming that their family were killed or they lived there were never entered that building, like the man you can see in the image. And how do we use super recognizers in a live environment? Well, if we've got observation posts, we can use them. The case you see on the left is Jean-Charles de Menez. The man on the left was misidentified as this man, and it was shot by the police because it was a time of high-profile terrorist attacks. So if the police are observing a premises, they want to know if a particular target has left, then and this is the same in the military world, then a super recognizer is the best person to give that statement that that is the right person. So events like Notting Hill Carnival, mass events, super recognizers can be used to spot offenders in the crowd. They can find vulnerable and missing people as well. And they can do this either on the ground with using their own eyes, or they can use the CCTV systems. Major events like concerts, spotting people there. Either football or cricket or wherever there's any problem with fans, spectators who are banned or committing crimes. And airports, where the facial recognition machine fails, then the best person to check that the individual presenting a passport is the right person is a super recognizer. So super recognizers could be employed by the Indian Border Force as well. It's also important that we train the police to use the detectives who will get this evidence, because you can see here with this man's tattoo, it develops over time. Sometimes police officers are unaware of these things and are quite, they'll say, I don't think it's the same person. They have to be taught that how a super recognizer works, how they're better, but also be taught how to find other evidence like clothing and the like. And it's important from a police point of view that things are managed. So this guy here, Andy Pope, is one of the best super recognizers in the police in England. But you can see that from his 2,000 identifications, only nearly 900 have been charged. Why is that? Because of a lack of supervision, really. So we need to have the systems in place to manage these things like fingerprints and DNA identifications. And so in conclusion, really, that you can see this quote here from Professor Davis and Dr. Robertson, who are sort of UK experts in this field of psychology, you can read the quote, but there's a decade's worth of psychological science which shows that some individuals known as super recognizers excel at identification. And as I say, in India, you've got 20 times the amount of people that we have in Britain. And so you'll have 20 times as many super recognizers. And it works. You can see at court that in court cases, I looked at London's courts where 64% of people plead guilty. And as I've said, this could be, this is a massive saving to the taxpayer, and it's also good for the victims of traumatic crime. If there's CCTV involved, it becomes 86%. But if there's a super recognizer with multiple identities, it's 92%. We have a professional body which awards all their certificates. Lord Lingfield, who you can see in the image here, he's a member of the UK House of Lords. He's the chairman, and he will present the certificates that members of your university when they take the course. And we are now in official partnership, which we're very proud of. So how do we find super recognizers, and how would it work in India? Well, we would look at the use of images by the police force. We've got a very short test, which I can give you the link to, where it takes about 10 minutes to see if you can, how many faces you can identify out of 14. We also tell the police who's really bad, because it's important that the police know who are super recognizers, but who should not be involved in images. For those who score highly, we give them more online tests to see their true potential in the 4 areas I mentioned: long-term, short and long-term recognition, image matching, and spotting faces in crowd. And then we do face-to-face testing for the best and train them how to use their skill so it's admissible in evidence. And then we have the certificate from Lord Lingfield. And the skill fades over time. We find that in men and women, I think that women, it's 32 is the peak age. In men, it's 35, and then it fades away. There is also a racial bias. So white people are better at white faces. South Asian people would be better at South Asian faces. So in my experience, I would always have in London, where it's a very mixed society, I would have lots of super recognizers from every ethnic background. That said, if you live in a place with lots of different faces, super recognizers do learn them. So in conclusion, we live in a world where we can wear masks, and criminals can take advantage of that by disguising themselves. But this super recognizers is a cheap and effective way of targeting crime. A facial recognition system will cost millions of pounds. A super recognizer system for police costs tens of thousands of pounds, so it's a lot cheaper. It's nice to know in this world as well that humans actually have abilities better than the machine. The machines haven't taken over yet. Super recognizers could make India safer on several levels. Firstly, targeting low-level criminals, people who commit lots of thefts and things like that, but also rapists, murderers, and at the top, terrorists, and they could also help to protect your borders. So you need trained super recognizers and a system to get them as many images as possible. I'm very proud that we're in partnership with the National Forensic Science University, and I look forward to working together. And even the criminals agree it's a good thing. So you remember the guy Idris I showed you before? Here he is with the Commissioner of the Police. This guy here was identified by these very poor quality, from these 2 poor quality images by him. When the man was sent to prison, he actually wrote Idris a letter to tell him well done. That was a great identification. So even the criminals think it's a good thing. But there is my contact details. And I'm willing to answer any questions. I have Kelly, as I've said. Kelly is a fantastic super recognizer, highly scoring on all the tests, some of the highest scores in the world. And she's also helped the police on several investigations, including for various murder crimes. And so there we are. There's my details. And Kelly and I are ready to answer any questions.
Yes. Thank you, Mike. Miss Kelly, you also want to share some of your some of your ideas or the about the training what you have got with the participants who have joined.
Yeah, that'd be great. How long have I got? Do you want me to just speak for a few minutes, or
you can speak for 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes max, what you want to speak, and then we take up some questions.
Perfect. Okay, so my name is Kelly. I'm a Super Recognizer and I'm the operations manager for Super Recognisers International. Now, I've only known that I got this skill as a Super Recognizer for about 3.5 years. And I was reading a crime novel, and in the crime novel, they talk about super recognisers, which I'd not heard of before. So I Googled the term and found the testing at Greenwich University. So I took the tests, and one thing led to another. I did all the long tests and scored really highly, and ended up working as a super recognizer operationally. So the kind of things that I've done vary greatly, and we can apply our skill to lots of different fields. So some of the more high-level crimes that I've worked on are murder investigations. So for instance, I will review CCTV images and footage from the scene of a crime, and we'll look at it afterwards and see if I can pick out the offender within the crowd, or we know we have the offender, so they may have arrested the person for the murder, and then it's my job to see if he premeditated that murder, whether I can see him around the place of the murder scene to prove that he actually had premeditated it. So there's lots of ways it can be applied. And on the murder investigations that I've worked on, I've been able to create a big package of evidence for the prosecution, showing them video, maps, all of the movements of the criminal, and they are able to bring that to court and get and it helps with the case. So whilst it won't prove it all on its own, it becomes part of the package that they are able to submit in court. And we've had some very successful results and convictions. Now, I also work on sporting events. So I've been working on covert operations at somewhere like the Wimbledon Tennis Championship, which is a very high level championship in our country. And they have all different types of criminals. So for instance, I went to the security briefing in the morning there on one morning. They gave me an image of a sex predator who was going to be coming along to the youth tournament, and they wanted to keep him out. So they gave me his photograph, and I went out into the crowd there was 42,000 people at Wimbledon that day, and I found him. And I saw him on the other side of a tennis court. I knew it was him the moment I saw him. It was instinctive. And then I walked to the side of him, just got another view, was happy it was him, and called security, who were able to take over. So the way I explain how it feels to be a super recognizer is that a lot of us are good at recognizing somebody we knew from a long time ago. So let's say we went to school with that person, and 30 years later, we look across the street and we're like, wow, that's him. I went to school with him when I was a kid. However, the super recognizer side of things is you can be given a photograph of someone you've never seen before, just one image of him. It can be a not very good image, or it can be, it doesn't matter on the quality. You can look at that person in that photograph and then be deployed into a crowd, and you can find them. If you get them in your vision, you will instinctively know it's them. So we have a really good result, and percentage wise, we get a high percentage of results that are positive because we're so certain. It's very successful out on covert operations. We do large crowd events as well, like concerts. So what I'll do is I'll have some intelligence that an organised crime group are targeting concerts. So they're going into the crowd, into the audience, and they're stealing their wallets and their mobile phones. So before the concert, we'll have a briefing with the police department there, and they will show us lots and lots of images. The last concert I did, they had 60 faces for us to look at. We look at those images, we absorb them, and I get a team of people together, and I put a person on each entrance to that venue. So a large arena, we can put a big team and have each entrance watched. So we've got an observation point on all of those. And if any of those 60 people come through that door, we will know. And if it's 4,000 people walking past me and that one person is in there, I will spot them, and then I can radio to security and they will come and approach them. They'll confirm their identification, and then they'll be removed if needed. One of the most rewarding parts of my job is missing persons. And I work with a large organization in America that deals with missing and exploited children. And to give you an example of what I've done recently, they will send me images of the known person. So let's say family photographs, and then they will send me images from facial recognition software, and then I will have to pick out the person. If I can find them, maybe 300 faces. So recently I was given the photograph of a predator who had kidnapped 2 children aged 2 and 4. I was able to find him and the 2 children from facial recognition software, and within 6 hours, the police that locally had arrested the guy and rescued the children. So it's something that will work really quickly. Now, the police don't just take my word for it and then go and arrest people. They will take my information and they will then go look through it, find out if we've got the right people, and we get a lead on it, and then they go and get them. So 6 hours before we found them, it was a really wonderful result. So as Mike said before, we can work quickly. This is what's great. It doesn't take us long to make an identification. In fact, it's really quick. It's a split second. So we also do facial comparisons. So I will be asked to produce a report. So I might have some images of a person, and they want me to verify if a person in a video is that same person, or they might want me to prove that somebody isn't someone. So I will have to create a big report. So I'll get the 2 photos I'm comparing, the 2 faces, and I will know immediately, no, that's not them. But that's obviously not enough for evidence. My instinctive reaction isn't good enough to say, yeah, it's not them, that's it. So what I do is then I create a very detailed report which maps out each part of the face and points out the differences or the similarities, which will then create an evidential report for the person that needs it. So it might be corporate espionage. It might be just a private client that needs to prove something. It could be for the police. It could be for private investigators. So that's a really important part of work as well. And we get some fun things too, you know, looking for the founder of a business. They've got some old pictures from 100 years ago. Is this the guy that founded our company? It could be, you know, nice things too. So we do a various range of different operations, and our skill can be applied to very, you know, numerous fields. So that gives you a kind of flavor of how we work, what it feels like to be a super recognizer. And Mike and I would welcome your questions.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you so much for the wonderful insights. We are having one question. Can identifications made by super recognizers be used as evidence in court?
Yeah, I can answer that. So yes, because I imagine Indian law is very much the same as British law. Police officers have always been able to go to court, or witnesses have been able to go to court, civilian witnesses have been able to go to court and make identifications. Now, obviously, all human identifications, the judge will warn the jury that they have to be careful, but often with an identification, it's not the only evidence. So as I've indicated that, you know, once you've got a name through the face, you can then do DNA checks. You could look at the person's phone and see where they were at the particular time. You can put them on an identification parade so other people could check them. You can search their house and find the clothing, or look on Facebook and find social media and find if you've got other images of in the same clothing. So yes, the identification evidence in Britain is admissible, and I have no doubt it would be the same in India. But it's, as I say, it's a start point, and then other evidence can be added to the case.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
And any other questions?
Any other question, everyone?
Mike, we have certain questions related to the CCTV camera. I think that is not of your area of concern.
In what
So,
sense? So if you ask me the question, I'll see if I can answer.
yeah, the person has asked Mike about whether we are having any encryption technique or the coding for the video coding technique for the CCTV video, and also the decryption of the CCTV footages.
Yeah, I mean, all I would say to that is that that's a security measure it's of no consequence to the police or the super recognizers, because the only thing is, do they get the images? If you're going to encrypt something, do you need to encrypt it? Because you're just making it more difficult for the police and the super recognizers to see the images and catch the criminals. That would be my answer to that question.
He basically wants to ask about in cases of the drone cameras. So that's why I thought that it is not of our concern here to discuss. So that's why I've not taken up.
I mean, again, with drones, they're very useful for, I mean, in the UK, super recognizers have used them after a football match where there's been fights and hooliganism. And so drones are very good for crowd footage. But again, the actual technical details are of no consequence as long as the police super recognizers receive the images. How they were obtained is of no, it doesn't matter. It's like a fingerprint. If a fingerprint is found, it doesn't matter if the fingerprint is on a piece of wood or a piece of metal or a piece of glass. A fingerprint is a fingerprint to a fingerprint expert. So, and then it can be compared.
Okay. I'm having one question from Kelly. Miss Kelly, I want to know if you have to recognize a person who is at a certain age. For example, if I say I'm watching a children at the age of 4, and then you have to recognize the person at the age of 70, how challenging it would be for a super recognizer to recognize a person at a certain age of gap?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it comes up a lot in my work. So it doesn't. Children's faces are very, they obviously hugely change, proportions change, but I've worked on cases where I've been asked to prove the identity of a much older elderly person, and I've been given images of the person throughout their life, starting at an early age. So it is harder to compare a child to an adult, but it is not impossible, and I do it quite often. So whilst their facial features change, they don't change enough for me to not be able to identify them later. So it's age difference doesn't matter. I when I was training with Mike, I got shown a photograph of a guy about 17 years old with spiky blonde hair, very fresh face. And then I had to go out onto the street and find him. And when I found him, he was probably 20 years older. He had slick down hair and a great big beard. So literally nothing like the image of what I saw 20 years prior, or that he was in 20 years prior. And you can still, there's something about it. I don't know it's still not proven exactly what the super recognizer is seeing, whether they're looking at specific features. But from my own personal point of view, I believe I'm seeing a shape, and I'm seeing a 3D shape that just triggers when I see it again. And it doesn't matter if it's just a small part of that face, maybe profile, side on, just a part of their jaw, it still triggers that feeling in me that I know it's them. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I understood. Thanks, Kelly.
Can I add to that as well that I've just done an exercise last week with the Thames Valley Police in England, and they had to spot various people during an exercise in a shopping centre. 2 of the photographs that were shown were at least 30 years old, of people when they're 18 and they're now in their 50s, and those targets were spotted. They were shown a photograph of a 14-year-old boy with a big fancy hairstyle, and then they spotted that he was one of the security guards who's now 25 years old. So the age thing is the super.
I think Mike's frozen again.
This video is stuck.
Yeah, he must be having internet issues.
Yeah.
I can take over for now until he comes back if you'd like.
Yes, sure.
So I think hopefully we've answered your age difference question.
Yes. And one more thing, and Kelly, I want to know: is there any special quality in a person that a super recognizer has that can we recognize that yes, we are having that quality to become a super recognizer, or is it that training that we need to go through?
I think what you're saying is there a specific trait you need or quality you need for a super recognizer?
Yes. Yes.
Because it's something you're born with. You can't learn how to do it. So there's a specific part of our brain called the fusiform, which is the part of the brain that recognizes faces. And we are born with that part of the brain functioning in a different way to everyone else. So that's the thing. You can't learn how to become a super recognizer, but what you can do is learn everything around it to enhance your skills. So, you could learn how to carry out surveillance like I've done. So I've fully surveillance trained now. And you can learn the law around it. You can learn how to detect, do behavioral analysis, so you can understand how criminals should be acting, and that will help you to supplement your skill. The personality traits, I deal with a large team. Everyone's different from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life. And some are better at certain parts of super recognizing than others. So some might be brilliant at going out and finding someone in a crowd. Somebody else might be really good at matching a face to another face. What I do is I try to pick the right super recognizer for the job that we're doing at the time. But to deal with the police, you need to be very meticulous. You need to have a huge eye for detail and attention to detail, and be very methodical and process driven to work with the police successfully, in my opinion, as a super recognizer. But yeah, you can use everybody in different personalities, different personality traits and different characteristics all combined for a good team.
Right. I understand. Thank you, Kelly. We're having one more question. Can we take the super recognition test online? Someone is asking.
Yes, so I've literally just put in the chat box, I've put it's a 14 face test. It takes about 10 minutes. If people want to have a go at that, bearing in mind these are white faces, though, so we normally say if you score 12 or more out of 14. I think if you're South Asian, ethnicity is South Asian, and you score more than 10 or more, then I think we'll find tests where we can send you some of Asian faces, but the link is there. The idea is if you score 10 or more, if you tell Serbi, and then I'll take it. We can arrange some more extensive testing, but that's just it's a good indicator, and it's very short. So it's in the chat box now. The actual link, and it's in English and several other languages.
Okay. Thank you. And we are having one more question with us. How plastic surgery can pose a challenge to face recognition by super recognizers?
Kelly, do you want to do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. And I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've been testing myself on it. So whilst plastic surgery or facial surgery can change the features and the shapes of the features, there's still something about the overall shape of the face that cannot be changed. You cannot change the proportions necessarily. So I have looked at faces before and after really heavy surgery, and I still know it's them. It's not a challenge. There's still something that would trigger our response. So plastic surgery, masks, as Mike discussed earlier, we're able to recognize someone just from a small part of their face, and it doesn't matter what you do to that face, you can't change certain characteristics. So yeah, that wouldn't pose a problem.
Okay, thank you so much, Kelly. And again, there is one more question which you have already answered. The question is same, that how reliable is the statement of super recognizer is considered in court. I think Mike has already answered this question very briefly. Yeah.
And just to add to that, I've worked on 3 murder investigations, and all of the evidence that I put together for the police and the prosecution, that was successfully accepted through into the case and in court, and there was no problem at all with that. So yes, it is accepted through.
Okay, I guess any other question? If anyone is still having any query or any doubt, you can ask. We're having the super recognizer herself, Miss Kelly, here. So,
I mean, I'll just reiterate it. This will help the Indian law enforcement and security services and border control make India a safer place. So we look forward to working.
I think, Mike, you can tell them something about our MOU, the NFSU and Super Recognizers MOU. Like we will be proposing for Indian population.
So what we're doing in India, I'm working together in partnership with the university. Each year we'll be running 4 courses for at least 30 students. We will run them either face-to-face or online. I'll also be available to speak at the university for different events and to help with different courses. I'll also be looking at different courses we can offer the university regarding the use of CCTV, from the obtaining of images or getting images through to the identification processes, detective training, senior police officer training, and all manner of things that we can use to get the whole process up and running, and just to make India a world leader in the use of digital images and identification. So I look forward to that.
Thank you, Mike. So we at NFSU and the Super Recognizers International, we will be coming up with some the training programs and the courses on the face recognition. We will be working on identification of the human on the basis of their behavioral patterns and also the gait pattern analysis. So we will be shortly coming with the courses. Since this is a very new and a very unique field, which is not currently, it has not been introduced in India. So this is a very unique and a very original or a new kind of a course, which we will be launching soon. So just wait for the next step, and we invite you all to join the courses related to the super recognizers, so that we can train you and you can also become a very good super recognizer in identification of the faces. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Any other questions? If you have, we can take up some questions. Otherwise, Ujala, you can give your concluding remarks.
Okay. Well, I've put my email. I'll put my email in the chat box. If anybody feels embarrassed or wants to speak to me personally, then I can. Or if you want to message Kelly, if you send it to me, I'll copy Kelly in, and so you can ask a question via email if you wish. So my email address is in the chat box now. You can copy that, and as I say, if it's for Kelly, I'll make sure she gets it.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
I, Ujala Jain, Research Assistant for NFSU BPRND project, feel honored and privileged to get the opportunity to propose vote of thanks on this special day. On behalf of NFSU, I convey my regards and hearty thanks to our speakers for the day, Mr. Mike Nerville, founder of Super Recognizer Unit and CEO at Super Recognizer International, and Ms. Kelly Hearsey, Operational Super Recognizer, for gracing their important work and introducing us with their opinions on human super recognizers into law enforcement and border security in India. Words are not enough to tell you how this webinar is going to help us in future. I'm sure your enlightening presentation and discussion will benefit us all who have joined us today in large numbers. It was an amazing session where we got the opportunity to learn an entirely new subject. I personally liked how super recognizers can bring a change in the future of forensic investigation and border security. The way it was introduced was exemplary. I would like to extend my humble gratitude to Honorable Vice Chancellor of National Forensic Sciences University, Dr. J. M. Vyas, and respected Campus Director, Dr. S.O. Junare, for their constant motivation in organizing such knowledgeable webinars. It is their support and hard work that made NFSU world's first and only university dedicated to forensic science. I also like to thank my guide, Dr. Surmi Mathur, for being an excellent coordinator for this webinar and extend my vote of thanks to my colleagues, Ms. Kritika Sood and Ms. Varnika Mehta, for giving an excellent assistance and management to this event. A big thanks to the senior officials, senior delegates across the globe, and all the attendees of the webinar who must have definitely got lots of information out of this worthy session. Thank you everyone for taking your time to be here today and making the event successful. Let us now conclude the session. Namaste, Jai Hind.
Thank you, Jala. Mike, are you there?
Yes, Sunny just asked.
As per the protocol now, I think we are concluding the session. But just if you have some 5 minutes, I just like to introduce you to one of my colleagues, Dr. Priyanka Kakkar. She is from the School of Behavioral Sciences, or more precisely, I say the School of Forensic Psychology. Ma'am, are you there? Can you listen to me? Am I audible? Priyanka, ma'am? She posted some question or the query in the, yeah, okay, ma'am is listening. Ma'am wanted to ask that how you as a super recognizer go with the identification and the reconstruction of the faces.
Well, I'll let Kelly, I suppose, answer, but if somebody has a reconstructed face, it will make, obviously, to have challenges. But if an image exists of what their new face looks like, then they can be identified. But we've got to bear in mind that, you know, out of 1 million people, probably one person has a reconstructed face. The vast majority of people keep the same face all their life. So the Indian super recognizers can identify lots of offenders. But I don't know what Kelly has got to add to that.
Is the facial reconstruction, does that mean that you are, would that mean, say you found skeletal remains and you've done a reconstruction of the face, so you're trying to rebuild it to identify, say, an unknown?
Yes, actually, just give me 2 minutes, Dr. Priyanka. In the accidental cases she is talking about, in the cases of accidental cases. Ma'am, Priyanka ma'am, is your mic available? Like if you can directly ask the query from, okay. Kelly, Dr. Priyanka is not having the mic.
Yeah.
She can only type on the chat box.
Okay.
I think it will not be that better for you to understand what she wanted to say. So
Okay.
I think Dr. Priyanka I can give your number, or I can give your mail ID to Dr. Priyanka, and she can come up with the query.
I said she's just typed that.
Yeah, I think she has typed something. Suppose a person has met with an accident.
I've got you. Yeah.
Or maybe in that cases, the face is having a problem. Maybe there is a injury on the face. So can you go for the reconstruction of the face?
Yeah, I mean, like Mike says, the case of that would be exceedingly rare. So and it's not something that I mean, I'm thinking of a gentleman that we have here who is badly burned, and you would not be able to recognize him from his previous, you know, look. So I think that if it was bad enough, no, there's no way you could do that. But I don't think it's ever going to come up. I think it'd be a very rare thing.
Yeah,
I think more precisely, Priyanka ma'am, you can have a mail ID or a contact number of Kelly or maybe Mike, and you can get along with them. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Mike, for your time. Thank you, Kelly, for your time and the wonderful session on a very, very new topic and a fresh topic. I'm sure the audience have loved the topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I look forward to meeting you all in person.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah, definitely, ma'am. Thank you.
So, do you want me to end the session now?
Yeah, now the session has ended. Like if the people really have some questions, more questions, I think we can direct the questions of them to you on the mail.
Yes.
So that will be more convenient for you also to answer.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, thank
It
you.
was a real
Bye.
honour.
Have a
Thank
nice
you.
day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.